Hey everybody, it's good to see you. I see you, Ben. Do you see me?
I don't think that would fit the theme. See me? No.
Ah.
Okay.
So, how's it going? You have a good week here at the Camelot Unchained factory?
It was a pretty interesting week. There seems to be a lot going on. I think there's a few things we have sort of worked out this week, but not quite nailed down. We need some assistance from Mark, who's sadly not here today. But once we get these things figured out, then maybe we'll have some interesting things to talk about next week or two.
The plague has come to City State. You know, the awesome thing about the whole open office pit thing that we do here is things are communicated really easily within the office. That's ideas, that's plans, that's bugs, that's suggestions, and that's influenza.
Oh my god.
Let's see, when the flu hits your face like, I don't know, something...
Can of mace.
like a can of mace.
That's what you need a writer.
Yeah, I don't rhyme. Yeah, but come on, Max, give me a rhyme. Freestyle, Max.
A rhyme about what? On the topic of...
Let's have that's amore, but that's influenza. Or maybe it's just rhinovirus, I'm not sure. But yeah, it was
something. When the flu hits your face like a can of mace, that's influenza.
Yeah.
You started it.
Maybe we should stick to making video games.
Let's do that.
Okay.
So, yeah, so this week has been a week of a whole lot of just taking the stuff that's in flight and locking it down and cramming it in and getting it out the door and working. And I'll check with Tim on exactly what is on New Auto Prep. There will be testing this weekend for beta 1s, mostly around, like, let's run around and trash some buildings.
Bouncing buildings?
Yeah, bouncing buildings. It's been you know, I personally have had like one of those just incredibly busy weeks, and yet I feel like I've personally like done very little because I was just, you know, last mile of this person's thing and last mile of this person's thing and last mile of this person's thing, and let's have a meeting about their next thing, and you know, so I was bouncing all over the place, and I think I wrote like, you know, probably 100 lines of code all week myself, but a whole bunch of things that we've been talking about are now on Hatchery working right now. And so that's awesome. So let's dive into that. Coherent is essentially done, just looking for bugs and performance improvements. We got a new building UI in there. You know, just, oh, by the way, new UI for doing buildings.
Yeah, that was one of the things that would have been too hard to port over, and so it just got remade instead.
Yeah, it just got someone was like, I can just do this better and faster with Coherent. So that's done. Coherent's done, and what that means is, you know, obviously, like, everything's going to have bugs and stuff, but yeah, that's pretty much done. That's checked off. Matt is, you know, out of working on that. And that also means that, you know, there are no more places where, and because Coherent and 64-bit are tied together, there are no more places where, you know, the 64-bit client is missing features from the 32-bit client, like, you know, a building UI.
Right.
And so, hey, 64-bit client, check that out. Check that off. Coherent, check that off. You know, not much to say other than, you know, we'd like more people to jump in and, you know, test that out. So, timeline on getting rid of the 32-bit client entirely. We're not going to be doing it in 2018. We'll keep that around into early 2019. I don't I'll talk with MJ about the exact time. I mean, it's going to go away. We're not going to spend time QAing two different versions of the client, but you know, we don't want to, you know, we don't want to cut off 2% of our backers or anything like that. Every single one of you is important to us. But, you know, for the love of God.
It's been a while.
For the love of God, Montresor! I hear those, you know, I hear those Ryzens are, like, really awesome chips.
Yeah, I think we have some people who have high opinions of them.
Yeah. And by the way, just another thing is just, do you guys like the music? That nice, soothing background music? That's our music.
We can't hear the music.
They're playing our song.
They liked the music.
They liked the music.
Nice,
yeah.
The background stream music is new and cool, says Brand.
The background music is not new. The background stream music is just the ambient music from the game. I've been wanting for a long time, just like, hey, give us this music so we can have it in the background of streams, and just one of those logistics things to get done around the office.
Yep.
All right, so go into number 2, which is works ongoing for animations on siege equipment. That's Scorpion. So right now, players. Also, one of our new hires has been doing various work on this. We had another new hire start this week here in the Fairfax office, and we'll hopefully once he has shown his awesomeness, we'll be rolling him out. But I will say, I think he has the best beard in the office.
Sure.
You know?
Yep.
Like, it's not as long as yours, but it's...
He's very poofy.
It's fuller than mine. Like, I can't compete. Do not have that genetics, but... Anyway, so, one of the new hires has been doing animation work to get players to, attach to the Scorpion, sidestep as they walk around it spinning, and, doing other things about how, it's like, it's not exactly the animation of the siege weapon, but it's the animations of players interacting with the siege weapons. And so that's going to be coming into number 3, which is ongoing, nailing down exactly what the experience is on some of the larger siege weapons, like, the catapult.
Yeah, well, for all of them, really. We're going to have to go through and do some more design work on this, but that's what we're in the middle of doing, because we're trying to get to a point where we can have a big siege battle in the game using various different siege weapons, destroying a castle, and so getting the actual user interface figured out, getting the different roles for the different parts of working on siege, from like reloading to aiming and shooting, like getting all of those pieces figured out is something that we're in the middle of working on, because we're trying to do more than just guy stands by siege engine and keeps clicking fire over and over again. It's going to be a bigger part of the game than that, and so we're working on getting all the details of that sorted out in design.
I think Ben had a really good point. Is if we can make a trebuchet the kind of thing that you put one just in the middle of an empty field. There isn't even an enemy that you're trying to target, and if we can make that a fun thing for them to interact doing. Then we have found the right place. Like, that in itself should be fun. It should not just be you click the button. It's got to be you are doing stuff, and you are doing stuff together.
Yeah, we want to make it a more interactive and engaging experience than just useful for a purpose. Because, no matter what, siege engines are going to be important, because you're going to need them to destroy buildings and things. But that doesn't necessarily make them fun in and of themselves. So if we can get to a point where it's fun to use all by itself, and then it's also useful, then I think we'll be in a really good place for siege.
Yeah, I mean, and you make it, you like siege. The big siege weapons should be rare, right? I mean, they should not be the kind of thing that everyone has their own catapult, and so we have to make it so. And so you don't want a case where like 50 people show up to attack, and there's 5 catapults, and 90% of the people just sit around waiting for, a breach in the wall. Like, we need to be creating ways for people to work together to operate this equipment.
Yeah, well, you sort of look at it from like an economic perspective, right? Of how much are you investing in a siege to bring out all these expensive, large siege engines, having to expend ammunition and everything. And on the opposite side of that, you're destroying a building, and that building was expensive and took a long time to build as well. So there's both sides of that equation. So you have to sort of allocate resources proportionately to say, if you're going to have a big siege against a huge castle or city or something that somebody's built, you're spending a lot to build and bring all these different siege engines. But if you're just going to attack, you know, someone's personal house or just like a tower somewhere or something, you don't need all of that, and you can bring a lot less and probably rely on that in order to get the job done.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had not actually been thinking about it in economics terms. I'd been thinking of it in physics terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, it would just be complete overkill as well, and it wouldn't be necessary, but it's also, you don't want to over-allocate. You want to spend as much as you need to, not more than you have to.
So one thing that, you know, I think I will say about how the design is locked in is I will give you an absolute guarantee, we are all in agreement that there will be some siege weapons where any random physics object can be dragged over by players and loaded into it. That is a requirement. That is a hard thing. We will not back down from that.
There's certainly a lot of desire to fling random things in our game.
Maybe even Max.
What about me?
Nothing, but you're gonna play a Lucrepan, right? Right? Right?
Oh, aye, of course.
See, yeah, okay. So yeah, but you know, that gets really interesting into you know, just an example of some of the conversations we've had. It's like, okay, well, you know, for balance purposes, we want to say this thing does this many points of damage, or this thing launches projectiles at this rate. On the other hand, you want that, you know, the very organic emergent physics realism of, well, you know, this thing is soft, this thing is hard, this thing is heavy, this thing is light, this thing is aerodynamic. And so, you know, just tightening the screws on exactly, you know, where the game balance knobs intersect with the physics knobs is something that, you know, we've had some conversations about.
Yeah, there's going to be quite a bit of balancing this as well as designing the experience itself of, like, not only do we have to figure out all the interaction points and all of the interfaces and everything, we also have to figure out how much damage everything does and how much health things have and all that sort of thing as well. So it's going to be quite a task to get all this finalized and figured out, and we're just at the very beginning of it. But it should be an interesting time, and I think we'll.
Yeah, but we're not gonna wait to get it all figured out before, you know. Right now, it's kind of all right. Which are the things that are definite that we can carve off and you know, have happen right now? So
obviously, our starting point when we first get this in, it's not going to be very balanced. It's not going to be very polished, but it's going to physically work, and that's going to be the important part.
Yep. So, but yeah, Ben and I have spent a good chunk of this week back and forth on this, and there's, you know, docs shared around, marked up, commented all over the place, and, you know, that kind of thing. So it's been fun. I go home at night and I'm like,
And your wife loves it.
oh, my wife loves it, dude. Yeah, especially the battering ram. I think Twitch plays battering ram is the best phrase. I'll go ahead and take number 4. If you've building destruction effects. If you've knocked holes in buildings on Hatchery, you notice that, like, particles spray out and there's sound and you know, all those cool things happen when stuff hits. And Wiley did a good job on that. That's in. You know, it was a slightly more complicated task than just when does a building take damage. You know, the easy one is, okay, well, anytime cells go missing from a building, then, you know, we just spray particles from there. But what it really is, all right, but now there's a chunk of rubble, so you need to, like, work backwards from the building's missing a bunch of cells and there's a chunk of rubble, so which cells actually got destroyed and which cells are now just flying free as rubble. So it's a cool programming problem. But and you know, he did a good job on it. All right, I've been talking a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, but now we're in Binland.
Oh, are we? What are we doing now? Let's see. Number 5, work in progress, ability system improvements. So this is not so much my land and more programming still, but it is on the side of things that I've been heavily involved with. So Rob worked on the update to Archery, which will support siege abilities in the upcoming system. So we're working on converting a lot of things from the old way we were doing abilities to the new way we were doing abilities. And part of that is being able to control a siege engine, which itself is sort of the initiator of the ability, but the player controlling it. And so that's just an additional piece that we have to get put together so that we can support that in our new siege stuff that we're trying to put together.
Okay, so I guess this is another deep in Andrewland.
Yes, I think so.
Like so many things in my land, yet I wrote so little code myself. I guess that means I'm a lead or something. So mesh simplification. We do there's a lot of things that happen in the production of most games where you make a mesh and then you make like a version that has fewer triangles that you draw off in the distance, but we have a lot of user generated content, whether it's the way characters work or the way any shape that you might build, and then the terrain itself is procedural. And so Lee finished up a major part, and so normally you would be doing that as part of your build pipeline, and just games would come in with levels of detail and stuff. We push user-generated content hard, and so a lot of the work that we do, a lot of things that you would normally do as part of like the build pipeline for a game, just has to be done real time in the client. And so mesh simplification is one of those. So Lee finished up a major part of this work in getting mesh simplification to be kind of a universal generic tool that wasn't just special cased for characters, and we now run it on buildings, and we now run it on terrain, and that let us bring in much more accurate physics colliders for the terrain now that we have greatly simplified meshes. So kind of I'm gonna divert for a little bit. Like, we have a fairly cool terrain system that lets us actually pull the verts up and even build like overhanging cliffs and all out of the terrain. But the kind of limitation of that is we were just using height fields for the actual physics colliders. A height field is just like a grid that's it's this high at this point, it's this high at this point, it's this high at this point, and just a big grid. And obviously that doesn't support terrain that curves up. So what we had to do, and so we've just been avoiding building those things. So what we had to you could just use a mesh of triangles as your collider, but a dense mesh of triangles is really slow for a physics engine. So by making our mesh simplifier universal, what that means is that we can take the use that mesh of triangles that's got way fewer triangles in it and collide with that, which means that now cliffs can actually overhang and the collision doesn't get messed up.
Interesting.
So I know you've noticed that Ben has spent a lot of time in the terrain.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that was a thing that we were not able to do before, but that's interesting. This will enable us to do something.
Yeah, so it's not just that the mesh simplifier works; it's that what this unlocks. Yeah. So lots of pieces coming together. Another one. Hey, look, it's the code that I wrote. All right, Tyler stuck this on here. This wasn't supposed to be a top 10 thing, but he was so happy about it that.
Hey, let's just be clear: the usefulness of your 15 minutes was fantastic.
So, as part of just helping debug and land the final bits of the mesh simplifier and the terrain collision generation and all that, I added like a special triangle view that just like takes all the triangles that things are rendered out of and pulls them apart very slightly. so you actually see just triangles all over the place. But it makes it really, really easy to visualize what's going on, and you can see like, hey, was that mesh simplified well? Is that too dense? Is that too far away? So, yeah, 15 minutes of hacking.
Yeah, so now artists will be able
yeah.
to see very clearly as things LOD or if models are
Yeah.
the way they expect them to be.
You saw the email.
Yeah, I did.
That was
It was
a cool
great.
screenshot.
And,
But, yeah,
I
it
mean,
was-
that's just the sort of thing that you kind of like expect game engines to do. But when you're building your own game engine, you don't get all that stuff for free. So we have to do each of those things.
Yeah,
And
it's
so-
just, it's not hard work. It's just, oh yeah, and there's always that choice between, do I spend the time to build this, or do I just try and get it done without this feature? Well, now we have that feature.
Yeah.
I'm probably a jerk for not building that for Tyler earlier, waiting until a programmer needed it to build it. That's probably not the best timing on my part, but programmers are the ones who are right in my face yelling.
Yeah. But
Especially
now
new
is a good time to have
programmers.
it.
Like every time we hire a new programmer, there's like a fresh set of eyes who's like, the things that we have just gotten used to living with as slight annoyances that make it. They don't crush anything, but okay, this makes everyone's day take a minute longer every day, and that eventually adds up. And someone new comes in and they find that awkwardness, and then we say, and it's a chance to fix those things.
Yep.
So yeah, so Lee is relatively new. I don't think we've said his name on stream yet.
Well, we have now.
Yeah. So hi, Lee. Welcome to City State.
Yep.
And he joins us from he was part of the Dark One for a while. Part of the Imperium. You know what I'm talking about. The place we do not speak of.
Yes.
So, yeah. Oh crap! It's another one. it's another hardcore engineering thing. So, last weekend we brought in the embedded building, or we brought in a dedicated building server, and that gets heavyweight calculations about buildings out of the main game server and the physics server that all are like super latency sensitive. So kind of these big batch calculations about recalculate all the physics interactions between every block in a building. It's kind of like we have two kinds of servers. The ones that are just this has to spit out a new game state 30 times a second or there's lag, and then there's, this might take 200 milliseconds or whatever, but we don't care when it gets back, and we want those separated from each other so that that those big heavy things don't disrupt the regular cadence of updates. So we got that in at the end of last week. It's working pretty well. We had an unfortunate crash on last weekend, so it's just been bunches of tweaks and fixes to that over the course of this week, and I am looking forward to actually abusing it now that I have a place that I can run these calculations better.
So this says this is the embedded building server. Is next the standalone building server?
Yeah. Yep. Right now it's kind of like it starts up in the same process, but it's separate code. It's there's kind of DevOps work to move it to another box, but incremental. Get it fully debugged while it's still on. While it's like a separate module within one physical server, and then move that module to another server.
Cool.
So
I guess I will do art, even though I'm not an artist to any extent. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm familiar with that we're doing here. So the main item is Art Animation 2.0, updated style and timing support, of which there are 3 pieces. Part A of that is animation retargeting. Sandra completed a first pass of several more animations this week, has begun importing all of the retargeting work in preparation for the 2.0 swap. Part B of this is the multi-skeleton support, which our entire game for a long time has just been running on one human male skeleton, and so we're doing a bunch of support to actually support more than one skeleton. And the multi-skeleton support allows us to do different types of skeletons for male, female, non-humans, basically any other things other than just the standard human skeleton that we were using before.
And I kind of liked having ladies strut like John Travolta, you know?
I guess we can keep that as an anim set option.
March on Oz was totally gender neutral. Like,
oh, yeah?
Yeah, like, you could put together your character and your outfit, and it was just like, the animation was just strut or sway. We did not actually say that was male or female. So, you could set it to strut with it and pick out a dress if you, wanted to, which is, yeah.
Yeah, when you only have one rig, you can do stuff like that. C, I don't know what happened here. Is there supposed to be text? I don't know what waiting means. C is waiting. There's no text. Someone will fix that.
I could explain.
Okay, do you want to explain?
Yeah. So when you have a character mesh, it's just all these vertices and triangles all over your whole body, and triangles connecting them to get the vertices together, and then you have a few just rigid bones, like there's one just rigid transform that's here, and every one of those vertices is weighted to some blend of bones, and like maybe the the verts right here will all just be like 100% to this bone, but then like elbows, around the joints,
wrists.
Yeah, like that. You have to be like, oh well, this one will be 30% of this bone and 28% of this bone, and that's 42% of this other bone, and like that's how you get like the meshes to move the way human flesh over bones would move. Mm-hmm. So
that's what
fleshification would be a good word for it.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to rename this.
Fleshify.
So I don't know what anybody is doing with that right now, but there is some reweighting of the skeletons going on, so that we can support having new rigs and making new armor sets and things like that. And then we have another art, Characters 2.0, not to be confused with animations. So better looking and more performant characters, of which there are 5 parts. Let's see. So we have part A of this, updated model LODs. So we're updating, and like you were saying, we have this mesh simplifier that automatically simplifies our meshes to do LODs, basically.
This is related.
This is moving away from that and doing like artist-driven LODs.
For certain specific things, yeah, where it's like not, where it's less player generated.
Okay, so it's going through and generating all of those so that we actually have a less procedural and more artist-driven character as the character moves farther away from
human eye can always do better than an algorithm. That's
so that's what that is.
That's how it is.
And then work in progress, importing and setup. Scott began importing the new character art this week. This supports testing on the skeleton and gets us prepped to swap all the assets. Completed updating the skeleton as well as 5 sets of armor for nude messers. So that's just updating all of the armor assets, basically. So as everything was conformed to a character that we previously were using or currently still are using, it all has to be shifted around a bit to fit the new model that we're going to have. So that's just a whole bunch of work that has to go into changing all the armors. There aren't that many armors in the game right now, and this is one of the reasons that we haven't built out a huge number of armors and things for players to wear, because we're still working on getting all the foundational settings for all those done. Once this is done, though, we should be able to very quickly start making a bunch more armor and clothing and other items for characters. Let's see. So part C of this is for ladies. All our armors are built on the human male proportions. This week, Dion, John, and Tyler fit several of the armor sets to the female proportions, specifically for the Arthurian and TDD armors. So I'm not sure exactly what they're doing for that, but I do know that our characters did all basically look the same once they were in armor before. And now this is going to make it so that they actually have different proportions. Even though you'll be equipping the same items, it will reconform to the
so it's not just grab these verts and pull them out or something like that. It's the skeleton itself has different proportions, like the rigid bones inside will have wider hips, or various other changes like that. So they need to be scrunched in, reweighted a little bit to make that look good.
Are we doing any kind of like a universal mesh deformer to get things from being male to female or something?
We're doing it on the content side.
Okay.
So it's like you're not going through every single one and pulling all the verts in. It's more, working, kind of set of macros and transforms that are applied, but we're not doing it in the client at runtime. Right. Tyler?
Yeah, sorry. we try to be so honest and clear that you guys said something that was a little wrong, and so I was like, do I come over here and do the thing I usually do? So the males and females, they actually use the same skeleton. Technically, moving forward, we could do a different skeleton.
Okay.
But simply because, what we're trying to do is work smart as well. So the males and females were built as much on top of each other, the actual meshes, as could be done, so that the skeleton could work for both. Where in the past we made the females look more female was by just giving the females different animations. So they had a little bit more of a hip sway. It wasn't too drastic. I mean, that's more for the animators to specify how they want the women to look. But the actual skeleton's the same. What we're doing is basically taking the female form, which, like you said, has breasts, has hips. The guy is more of a V and a thin waist. And we basically just kind of scrunch everything into the right place, pop it into Maya, snap all the verts, assign all the materials, export all the pieces. There's a lot of steps in all this.
So that's a different model, but it's still the same skeleton?
Same skeleton,
Okay.
different models. Yeah.
I stand corrected.
Yeah, so it looks like a girl. And that means that we don't have to retarget all the animations when we do them once for the male to a new skeleton.
But when we get to giants or leucopans or something...
So leucopans are right now, I tried to line all this work up so that we would be experimenting with some of the work that we would have to do moving forward with different races. So the leucopan are now have a unique skeleton that is no longer, it's basically the same proportions as the old male, which we did not like and had some weirdness. So now the leucopan's human weirdness makes them even more different than the way the humans look. Before, they basically shared everything was the same except the size of their head, their fingers, and their feet. So now the body's actually different. This gives us a little bit of an idea of how much time it takes to retarget the animations to someone who's slightly different. Same with the armor. Dion and John, I mean, everybody who's been helping out has just been kicking ass. I mean, absolutely faster than I thought it was going to happen. But I want to get this, like I said, all this shit in the game so we can start cleaning it up and make giants and more armor and stuff like that.
Okay.
Giants will be the next thing because they're not too drastically different. We already have some models that we've built that just need a little bit of an update. And they'll be kind of a good use case for like, okay, new race, very different looking, and we can do it faster than, say, some of the more problematic, like the Strim or something like that.
Okay, so let's just keep you around while we finish talking about
go
art. Work in progress, updated nude materials.
Yeah,
Tell me about sexy nude materials.
So John's working on. So while one of the things to clarify is when Ben says like there's not too many armors, there technically aren't, but there's a male and female version of each. The TDD get a leucopan version. Plus, the nudes are all basically armor. This is all the same thing. It's just meshes that go on top of a skeleton. So there is a nude mesh for each male and female. The humans actually share quite a bit of similarities. The hairs are different, the textures are different, but basically the meshes are the same. So what he's doing...
Somebody's asking if giants have a different armor from humans.
Giants, there's a design side of this of like what should be available for giants, but assuming that the same thing for a human or a leucopan or whatever is available to the giants, we will then do the same thing we do with the girls, the same thing we do with the leucopan. We'll actually mesh that in. If he's got a bigger, wider arm, we'll stretch it out, snap all the verts, import it. It'll be a new version.
From a design perspective, I think the overall thing is like there's a certain amount of just, all right, we just change the model depending on who it's on, but we also limit it like I think it's like small, medium, large.
Yeah,
so we've talked about actually having sizing on things.
Yeah,
so
we've
that
talked
you
about
can't
this.
equip
Yeah.
the literal same item on
Right, like
a
you
very
have to
small
craft
character and a
the
very large
leucopan
character.
version.
But yeah, so like change it, so it'll be for gameplay purposes, it'll be kind of small, medium, large, but it won't necessarily be male or female, but then it'll change shape when you put it on.
Yeah, I mean,
male or
it's going to
female.
depend on how verbose the design wants to be, but the assets will exist. But to finish the nude materials, John's working on the updated pics. Basically, all the materials had to be updated for the new UV layouts and all the new meshes. I mean, we're literally rebuilding all the work, faster than we did it originally, and it's all going to be better. And for the love of God, we just got to get it all in. I want to work on giants and other things. But so he's been making the pic. He's got the pic with all their tattoos and stuff that he's updating over there, and then he's going to work. He already finished off male and female Lukerpan, and I've got pictures of naked Lukerpan to put in the update today.
Yeah,
Nice.
we call that the max factor.
The max factor.
The max
What does
factor.
it have to do with me?
You said you were playing a Lukerpan in game, right?
Oh, right. Now I have to model nude for the Lukerpan?
Well, I mean, your avatar has to model nude.
Yeah,
But
there's
yeah, so when Max plays a Lukerpan and we load him into the catapult,
he's got to be naked.
he's got to be naked, and he has to be oiled up for maximum. We shave him down,
Yeah.
oil him up,
Well,
and then
so what
he's
we'll
just
need-
gonna cut through
So
the
what
air.
we'll need, Andrew just committed
Oh.
himself to some work here, George, or maybe Wiley, I don't know, to do our gloss value on the characters that changes based upon weather or oiling.
Oh, that's easy. That's
Okay.
that would actually be even easier than showing you all the triangles.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
I'm expecting this the next time it rains.
Yeah. That's what I was-
See, that's hard because we have to worry about the weather, but just if character equals max set to maximum
Oh,
oiliness.
okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's
Yeah. We actually, that would be fun because there is a Rob on fire thing in there too.
Is there really?
Yeah, there's a command to set Rob on fire. It finds whatever character he's playing on the account, I think, and then just lights him on
I
fire.
always thought that was a myth.
No, it's in there.
No, it's something that actually, and it was just to prove out doing lookups of characters by ID in the ability system. But it was
So we got a bonus out of it.
yeah,
Yeah, light Rob on fire.
yeah. That
Um,
bonus.
I think that was the last thing, right? Oh,
New
news.
class.
in progress
So-
art, new class skill icons.
So, Mr. James Koo and Ms. Michelle knocked out all the new healer ability icons this week. Are they in game?
No,
Are they
this
on
is
Hatchery
all.
for
This
people
is
to
all
see?
for new stuff.
No,
Okay.
yeah. So there's a bunch of new skill parts or ability components as we're transitioning names that have been designed but not yet implemented because we're waiting until we have the new ability editor. Once that editor is ready, then these are the icons that will be used for the new stuff that's been designed, but it's not going to replace any of the stuff that's in the game right now because that stuff is all going away as soon as we get a new editor.
Cool. Okay. So, so that's going to be rolling out, probably very, very early next year.
As soon as we can get it, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure when everything will be in, but
Yeah.
we're at least going to start with a minimum set of things just to get it basically back up to where it is now, where you log in a character, you have a bunch of starting things made, and you can run around and do some basic stuff. The idea with all of these icons is that this is for a larger set of things when we get the ability editor hooked back up so that you'll be able to actually create your own abilities and have a much larger set of things to pull from.
Okay, you guys are roughly down at the bottom there.
And
almost.
I'm gonna go.
Michelle's done a bunch more mage concepts and
Yeah,
paintings.
yeah, so
and,
it's the-
Will those be in the update email?
Yeah. It's the
Awesome.
wands and scepters, and then the gloves or gauntlets after.
That's cool.
Gauntlet sounds cooler than glove. I'll bolt and let you guys continue playing unless there was a specific character question. Okay.
Bye-bye, Tyler. Bye-bye. So, fun
It's a lot of
times.
stuff.
What's your favorite thing you did this week?
Well, I think talking about Siege stuff this week, we did a lot of that. Haven't really come to any implementation things yet because there's still a lot of work that has to go before that. But
Yeah.
just getting into the initial stages of it and getting through some of the concepts and making sure we have a lot of the ideas put in place that we'll be able to build on top of, I think has been a really good time.
So I think there's what's your favorite concept right now? Like you can crack the door a little bit.
For like which Siege Engine concept? So going through the design revisions for that thus far, I kind of like the idea of having the anti-siege weapons which are there specifically for the purpose of shooting down incoming projectiles, because that's something that you don't really get in other games because they don't have physics-based projectiles that can actually be interacted with. It leverages some of the same things we're talking about with just our ability interaction system in general, but it also means that there's some physics involved, and you can actually have these giant siege engines that are throwing these giant projectiles, and then you have defensive siege engines that are shooting those projectiles down before they hit the castle. And I think that'll be a really cool thing if we can get it put together.
Yeah, I think there was one that, like a Tuatha one that just like unleashed a giant swarm of spectral bats out into...
Yes, it shoots bats.
Yeah. Literally a bat gun.
Now, I don't know if that will make it into the game or not, but that was one of the things I put down because I thought it sounded fun.
Yeah, I don't know. This is one that's likely to make it unless, it just turns out to suck. One constant in all of this was that, some of the heavier things, like multiple players will have to together pick them up, and then the motion will be like, just, all right, we're all carrying it, and this moves in the average of everyone's motion. And just, like, no, really, go over there.
Yeah, I think
that's going to. I think that's going to just be, it's going to be hilarious, but also going to introduce teamwork for, you got to get your group together to actually move that, to actually haul that thing, and especially on the battering rams.
Yeah, I think battering rams with the multi control of battering rams, I think that will be a really good time.
Yeah, there's, not gonna get into the into some of the specifics on it, but there's some really, really tasty stuff that's just like, I think Ben watches some Game of Thrones.
Yeah, well, not in the last couple of years, but maybe they'll make some new episodes. One
just
of these
saying,
days.
the things that happened at the wall.
Oh yeah,
Ben was watching them.
Yeah, I watch a lot of movies, play a lot of games, have a lot of things to pull from.
All right, so before we go into questions, what's your medal of the week?
Oh, geez, there hasn't been much this week. When I'm working on writing documents, I don't like to listen to anything that has words or lyrics to it because it's hard for me to write, and so I've been listening to like 2 Steps from Hell, stuff like that this week.
Ooh. Yeah, I've been I've basically been unplugged this week too. It's been a sad week because I've so many things of like interfacing with other people. Have had to had my headphones off and talk. So yeah. I'm probably gonna go home and spend like just hole up and code the hell out of some things. And
sounds like a good time.
Tech death all the time for writing the hardest code. All right, 15 minutes, people, bring it.
All right, programming and design questions, go.
Or badly answered art questions.
Yeah, actually, let's just do that. Let's just say, all right, you take art questions and I will take audio questions only. Art and audio questions only. We will answer them badly.
A lot of women's trying to delve into some details here.
Oh.
On a scale of 1 to 10, where perfectly mirrored is 0, and the 3 shape changer classes are an 8, where do you expect the 3 crafting classes to be?
Oh, geez, I don't even know. That's more a question for Mark. We haven't really gotten into as much as we've gotten into the design for combat classes because we're trying to prototype out an ability system that has to support them all. We haven't really gotten into prototyping much of the crafter class. We've gotten into some of the UI for crafting, but not so much their actual abilities. The most I've gotten into with that has been a little bit of the stuff that they'll be able to do for siege weapons, because we want to have crafters able to operate siege engines at a higher proficiency than combatant characters, so that gives them a specialty that they can go into. But you really have to ask Mark how mirrored he wants them to be. I don't think they'll be completely the same, but I'm not sure how different exactly.
I mean, I think it's going to be at the low end of that. The things you can craft will be different.
Yeah, no,
but
obviously
the mechanics of the crafting are going to be pretty similar.
That's true. But they will also have abilities. They'll be able to place traps. They'll be able to use siege engines and things. And so those abilities, to some extent, I expect to be different. But To what degree is it's too early to really say.
Dark Society Network asks, it was hinted that characters might visually age, or the giant races might grow with age. How will this affect your armor design in the future? Will it be limited to a straight scaling with body height, or are you also thinking about character weight and armor transformation according to that?
Yeah, we're straight scaling. Straight scale.
Easy answer.
No question. Yeah. Also, you know, shout out to Dark Society. I have received the horrifying Sacrix soundboard. Tyler said we couldn't use it on the stream because he says fuck on every single sample. But, there's nothing like a Scotsman just like screaming F-bombs constantly. Just
and also for being a translator extraordinaire, Dark Society Network. All right, G-Dale asks, can players change the map for building roads, as in removing trees and rocks, etc.?
I'll say yes.
Okay. Odilvik asks, as someone who's experienced both, how would you describe the East Coast versus West Coast studio vibe?
I would say that East Coast is quieter, maybe a little more focused. The West Coast is chattier and more collaborative. I think part of that is, you know, that they're all engineers there, and part of it is, you know, just, you know, we're kind of quiet and focused, relatively speaking. So, yeah. East Coast is darker and angrier.
Darker and angrier.
All right, Brand asks, Ben, can stealthers fight in the Veil, or will use of abilities while in the Veil just automatically pull them out?
I think that they'll be able to do some things while they're in the Veil. I don't know if they will have all of their access to abilities, because there are certain things that are like, this ability is an initiator that like pulls you out of the Veil, and so some of the things just won't work. But they should be able to fight each other at least while they're in the Veil and do some of their abilities.
Adric Cortesia asks, do you have any plans to incorporate AI, machine learning, into the pipeline?
You know, it's been in there now. Like some of the stuff about how elements interact with each other. It's actually kind of the tree of stuff was so big that we just, you know, had machine learning pattern match it. You know, we'll use it on a case by case basis, but yeah, when it works, sure. It's, you know, it's not one of those things that just like completely changes the game. It's another tool in the toolbox.
Let's see. Lodoween asks, will falling damage from being launched on a siege weapon be the same as regular falling, or will it be more like having rubble fall on you?
I think it should be lighter. I think it's more fun if it's lighter.
That you get some bonus that you don't fall as hard if you're flying from a siege engine. I don't know. Like I think there probably will be a set of universal rules for how that works, and then we can apply buffs and debuffs on top of that. So like a piece of rubble hitting you is the same as you falling on that piece of rubble if things were all the same as far as speeds go. But then going out of a siege engine, if you specifically have a buff or something that says you take less falling damage, it might be something that we actually have to build into classes to give them to use in those specific cases, so that you can actually prepare to be thrown out of a siege engine just in case that you don't land in something that you want to.
Yeah, you hear about, you know, that guy who's just, you know, completely plastered, gets in some horrible drunk driving accident, doesn't even know that he's like, you know, was in an accident, thrown out of the car, rolls 100 feet, and you know he's just like fine because his whole body was loose. Yeah, you hear those stories now and then.
So
And,
alcohol is your solution?
the cause of and solution to all Max's problems. You're the one we're picking on today, man.
I'd have no problems afterwards.
Yep, grease up.
Junie Karhu on the YouTube chat asks, Ben, in order to limit AoE stack damage, how do you feel about reducing damage per each friendly character in the area of effect?
There are some area of effects that are supposed to have scaling. It's either like sort of rate limited, where if everybody has this effect, it affects all the targets, and then if another effect of the same type affects all the targets, it affects them to a lesser degree, or it divides among the number of targets. So if it hits 5 people, it's more effective per person than it is if it affects 20 people. There are a lot of ways that we can scale that if it becomes a problem, or just inherently because there are some things that we want to work a certain way. But I think one of the things that we've said is that we do want to have area of effects be important and be a way that a small number of players can effectively deal with a large number of players. So a lot of them won't have that sort of a scaling, so that they do have a beneficial effect and can be used to take down a large number of players in the same way.
Now, there was a key word in his question that I'm trying to zoom in on, which was scale by the number of friendly targets. So are you talking more about...
I think that's to say that, like,
so
if you
like
have 5
we
mages...
bring in a squad of 5 mages and, you know, we scale their damage down based on the number of mages? Would we do a thing like that?
I don't... The way that I would do that is not to do a spatial query, check for the number of players, and then calculate damage based on that for your friends. I might do that for your enemies. But I would probably do something like, after this effect affects a bunch of people, that effect listens for a while for another effect of that type and then scales it down. So if it's like, I'm going to catch all these people on fire. If they're already on fire and you do it again, it doesn't catch them on fire again, or it just adds a little bit to its duration or something.
Okay, so so basically it adds a buff, it adds a kind of a buff against itself for a duration.
Right.
So
there's sort of a rate limit, but it doesn't like specifically penalize like the first person because he has a bunch of friends around him. It's just that if you do that more than once, then it starts having a sort of
diminishing returns.
Yeah, like a diminishing effect.
Yeah, that's a cool way of solving it.
The man with no screen name asks, when is the next Coding with Andrew stream? I feel like of all the CSE staff that have streamed, I have tortured Andrew the least of all.
When is the next Coding with Andrew? Period.
What's the next code you're gonna write?
Yeah, I'm gonna do more work on building damage and you know have things
less bouncy.
Less bouncy.
Yeah.
Less bouncy, more breaky.
Oh yeah, because the shattering and stuff needs to happen. Yeah.
So
I wanted to attack someone by launching my entire castle at them.
if you can find a big enough catapult.
Okay. 5-minute warning.
5-minute warning.
5-minute warning, folks. Brand02 asks, are you guys getting enough testing feedback from us backers during all these tests?
I'm gonna defer to Tim on that. You know, we always want more. A lot of the things that we're doing, it's almost just, you know, most of the stuff that we're doing right now is very binary of, you know.
Does it even work?
Yeah, like, what is the crash rate on the 64-bit client? And it doesn't actually matter what you do as long as you are playing the game and, you know, like, we get our telemetry back from the client. And, you know, it's so even if you don't write a report, you are still helping us by jumping into the tests. And likewise on the server, like, you know, actually right now on New Auto Prep, parts of the New Auto Prep server are not running off in the cloud. They're running on Tim's computer with the debugger attached. And so, you know, again, it's like, you know, nah, just play, knock over buildings, and we'll see what we see. So, you know, even if you're not giving us, even if you're, like, the things we're testing right now don't necessarily need that kind of feedback, but we'll, you know, once we start rolling out skill changes, I'm sure Ben will very much want your feedback on what's fun.
Oh yeah, of course. Again, yeah. Once we get back into skills again, it's largely going to be stuff that's completely new, totally not balanced, and just to test out the new abilities
all of this
to see if it works. Yeah, just to see if it works. But once we get back into having all the classes have a good range of abilities again, being able to turn on the ability builder so you can build your own abilities, then we'll really start looking into actual gameplay and running scenarios, doing Saturday Night Siege stuff again, and then we'll want to look
please
a lot more at feedback.
Please tell us, like, if you were completely OP or UP,
right?
Yep. What skill parts did you slap together to make that happen? Like, that's the kind of thing where we'll super want feedback. So, anything else out there, guys? Pick a good one to end on. End on a high note here.
Looking for a good one to end on. Let's see. Zach on the YouTube chat asks, "Do you guys like beer? And can I send you some homebrewed beverage?"
Well, I don't do beer. I know you do.
Yeah, yes. Actually, there is something we. Speaking of people sending things, I totally forgot. Tearless painted us a picture.
I haven't even seen this.
It's the original classic logo, and it's not just painted. It's actually he carved this into the board.
That's impressive.
So you feel it?
Yeah, I can see that. That's cool.
And there's a very nice note on the back that unfortunately I can't read, but but it's very nice to us.
Okay.
Less nice to some people who aren't us.
Thank you, Tearless.
Yes,
yeah,
thank you very much. It says hashtag fist bump, hashtag code strong, hashtag beards are life.
Don't know that I've ever seen a painting with a hashtag on it, but sure.
Well, that's a pretty good note to
Well,
end
you're
on.
not a very good millennial.
I guess not.
Well, that's a pretty good note to end on, with the warm fuzzies from the painting.
Yep.
Does that mean we will see you later?
See you next time?
I will see you on the fields of glory when I take your head.
All right, keep an eye out for our update email going out later this evening, and thanks for joining us.
Yep.
All right. Bye, guys.
See you later.